one more before we get to reactions, just because I really am trying to get through the intro.
Do we have an ignorant one? Do we have a nescient society, or do we have an ignorant one? Do we have an ignorant one? Is our society ensconced in nescience, or is it ensconced in ignorance? I would argue absolutely that we are ensconced in ignorance in society, not nescience. I think we are...
I mean, I've got to rant right off the bat on this one. Part 5, Mark Passio's Natural Law Seminar. This is really for me. But I would have to say that the Epstein subject and the entire dismissal that abusive behavior is used to manipulate people of power, and from the Diddy trial to the Epstein case to many, many others, the evidence is everywhere. And it is so uncomfortable that society must be. Now, I'm making an assumption here, but I'm guessing society is like, oh, that makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to talk about it. I'll just let them bang someone else's kids. Did that sink in? Is that what we're afraid of? We're afraid to speak up because it's never ourselves. It's always someone else's. And oh, if they want to trade their children amongst each other, we'll keep just giving Tom Hanks awards for acting. Screw what he did to his kid. Is that just, we'll just keep ignoring it because it's easier? I would say all these years have passed and it's got worse. Much worse.
I would argue absolutely that we are ensconced in ignorance in society, not nescience. I think we are drowning in information. I think we are drowning in the truth that is all around us. But people are ignoring it, largely. Not everyone. There's many people who are very hungry for it and taking it in as fast as they can, you know? But I think the majority of human beings are in the state of ignorance, even though the truth is present all around us. And that constitutes what Art talked about earlier, this consensus trance, which people in the so-called truth community or truth movement have likened to sleep. They say that they are asleep. I liken it to hypnosis. If you look at the origins of the word hypnosis, right, it means suppressed knowledge. It comes from Greek. Hypo.
That's weird. I actually think that's an indicator that woke society hadn't been coined yet at this point. And that the Great Awakening was something that people were discussing but had no real feel in the real world. Didn't seep into it yet, I think.
If you look at the origins of the word hypnosis, right, it means suppressed knowledge. It comes from Greek. Hypo means under, as in hypodermic, under the skin. And gnosis means knowledge, the suppression of knowledge. Hypo means suppression also, under and suppression. So hypnosis is the suppression of knowledge. And that's the state that these people are in. And it's done by themselves. It's not, see, we have to stop looking at this as a victim relationship. This is a willful choice. In a time of overwhelming information available at people's fingertips, the truth being ignored is not an option. It's a willful decision.
Let it control you. You talk to it like a buddy. You let it monitor you. You let it measure you. You let it fucking follow you. You let it do all that stuff. but you never let it get you smarter once. Now, if I was making that up and this was some bad joke, there wouldn't be areas talking about taking phones away from children. We're there. That's how bad it got. The thing is that it was always going to be a put on. They sold ideas that were good for maybe super busy. Remember the BlackBerry? There's needed to be two levels to this shit. Instead, y'all went for the control system. It breaks my heart when I think about it. And like I said, I've been talking about it. I'm thinking about going to the local Masonic Hall just to start reading. Because the internet is full of so many bad avenues of influence and study. It just so many personal opinions stuck in there, and I just want the knowledge base to maybe grow a little bit farther than I am now. But I definitely want to break free from ignorance, and shining a light on all of the secrets of the world is where I, want to start.
That people are making. And it's a decision that they should be held accountable to because of what is going on, that they are ignoring, what they are allowing to go on in their name and not saying a thing about it. Content to let evil run amok. All right? And then people will wonder, why are we losing freedom? Why is freedom on the wane? Why is totalitarianism and tyranny rising up? Why do we see so much control and obsession with control in our society? They'll see that. Many of them will see the rising police state. They'll see the injustices in our society. They'll see the restrictions on our inherent natural liberty. Okay? But here's the thing, many of them will not make the transition to grasping. They'll say, yeah, this is what's happening to the earth. It's being turned into a huge prison everywhere. And at the most rapid pace right here in America. Okay? And they'll see this lock going onto the cage. But the question that they never get to, they don't even get to the question, let alone the answer, is why. They'll talk about the symptoms. They'll describe the prison.
So you can be herded into 15-minute cities in the New World Order's control system because they're going to go with climate change the whole way. Now, is it that the planet flipping? Is it some huge problem like the tinfoil hat? Or I don't know. I don't know if it has to do with the poles or this or that. What I do know is that they would like to control all the worthless eaters till they can get their robot workforces in place, and then the elites' families could depopulate the planet down to almost nothing because they'd like to run it themselves. They're that full of themselves. I can't imagine. Here, I don't really endorse assaulting anyone. I think that's a bad choice. But if you look me in the eyes and tell me face to face that you deserve part of the planet just for you and yours, I'm whooping your ass on the spot. You're so delusional to be able to say that you deserve a smackdown. I'm just saying, you need some sense knocked into you. And as far as I can tell, the tip top of the secret societies, what they really need to do is stop inbreeding and making flipper babies and come on out and get a couple elbows to the forehead. I believe the pitchfork and torch carrying mob will need to kick in the doors of the secret societies soon. Because being pissed off at your neighbors ain't doing a fucking thing.
They'll describe every corner of the cage accurately in many cases. They could tell you exactly how it's working. They can tell you all the different aspects of the control system, but they can't tell you why it's actually going into place. Why is that?
Because the WEF, the Bilderbergs, and those actual groups just added depopulation to their agenda, their discussion agenda. Now we are in a time machine. We're back 12, what? Are we back 12 years? As of right now, that one guy thinks that his AI can help control the speech of the entire planet. If the entire planet, which really scares the shit out of me because it appears that they're going to say, well, the entire planet endorses these immoral ideas. Now you have to too. But your moral stance on that, your high road, your I don't want to see abuse and destruction take place, well, that kind of care has to be eradicated. And then they'll show you the, cremation of care ritual from Bohemian Grove. And as always, you got to ask yourself, why would the world leaders want to destroy care? Oh, wait. Oh, you can't manipulate the world if you care for it? Huh, who knew? Who knew?
Happening. Aspects of the control system, but they can't tell you why it's actually going into place. Why is that happening? Well, that's what this presentation answers. Why are we losing freedom? And it gets to the actual heart of that answer. So what this presentation constitutes is a master key that unlocks all the locks to all the doors on all the cages in the prison, if it is accepted. And once again, I don't tell you that belief is required for that, because truth is always present. It's always here. It's a matter of, will we perceive it as being present, acknowledge it's present, by stop ignoring it, okay, and then accept it into ourselves, and then do something with it. Understanding is not the end. Taking in the knowledge and understanding it is the beginning. Action is required.
Now, at this point in the presentation, I would just like to give it up to Mark. I think he is incredible. I have 5,000 something reactions where you can get his message somewhere in a few of them, here, there, and everywhere. As he was mentioning in part 2 or 3, the whole work creates a tapestry. I hope that's what the story I'm telling is. Now, the end answers are about the same. The punchline's always the same. Yeah, the evil blood sacrifice cult that likes consuming children probably has to get addressed. No, I mean, that's an extreme take, but I there's my devil. There's my dark evil. And then anybody even LARPing at those ideas who don't support the ultimate evil that it represents, well, you're just useful idiots. LARPing as Satanists. But you realize that they have people giving birth in baby farms, right? There is some stuff we're going to have to address, and it is influenced by a strong understanding of the occulted information that we are going to learn over the next few weeks. They know this too, and then they corrupt it all. We just saw that winemaker in the Harry Mack video talking about the Lesser Keys of Solomon and binding demons as a hoot. It has never had anything to do with what you believe. It has everything to do what they believe. That's the problem. There's one of the biggest things we ignore. Doesn't matter what we think. It matters what they think. They think this stuff. That seems like so easy to understand for me, but I think it isn't. I can't comprehend believing in something that dark and evil anymore, but I certainly know they do. And why other people can't grasp that is amazing to me.
Understanding is not present. If I stop ignoring it, okay, and then accept it into ourselves, and then do something with it. Understanding is not the end. Taking in the knowledge and understanding it is the beginning. Action is required. See, knowledge is required, understanding is required, but then action is finally required. Above all, if change is to be created. And that's how the laws of attraction really work. So, will people as a whole, as a society, accept that master key? I can't answer that question. All I could do is try to place it into their hands. After I have taken that key and unlocked my...
In my personal opinion, a message to Mark himself. No, they've just redesigned the cage to be more comfortable in it. And then they've let their betters tell them they'll own nothing and be happy. So they'll just go to whatever cage they're told to go to. I think then they've been convinced to embrace it with open arms. I'm doing my part. Subjecting yourself to someone else's control, your compliance is not doing its part. Your compliance is part of the problem. Once we stop complying. Now, none of this is to imply you're supposed to take to the street and burn something down. There is still the moral, consequence-laden path ahead of us to be considered. All of the anger has no ability to turn me into something that I would go affect someone else's life negatively. It just gets me riled up. Now, I was told I gotta control that. Well, I'm working on it. But it definitely gives me a little fire in the gut when I realize, yeah, Mark, they just made themselves more comfortable in hell.
Try to place it into their hands. After I have taken that key and unlocked my personal prison, my personal cages, and freed my mind, all I can do is try to help people to see, here's how this key works. Here it is. Here's the information that constitutes that key. And here's how you put it to work in your life. That's all I can do. Can't make anybody take it. Let's look at what problem solving entails, because that's really critical to understand if we're going to get past this stage and where we're at in our stifled evolutionary development as a species.
I had to scroll ahead and see where we're at. I think we'll finish the main the problem solving section and then go call it a day.
There's a few main steps to solving problems, any problem. Doesn't matter what the nature of the problem is. The first is you have to recognize that the problem exists. Recognize that there is a problem to begin with. And I think by asking the question, is everybody content with the way things are? And nobody raised their hand. I think that's great because it at least acknowledges to me the people here today recognize we have a problem. And that's healthy, that's good, okay? Many people out there don't believe we have a problem. You know, they like this place. They like the world the way that it is, you know, which is unfathomable to me, because to me it's a living hell. And that's not because of how my own personal life is going. I'm very content with my own personal life. I have no self-inflicted suffering in my personal life. I don't create problems for myself. My life goes on.
I gotta go back and hear that again, because I am guilty of that. And I gotta, maybe that's one of the things I gotta pick up this time around is I gotta be a little easier on myself. The thing is I use society at large to measure my actions and deeds against. And Society falls short all the time, so I constantly feel like I'm being used up. And then they're like, well, then just don't. And I'm like, you don't have something in the pit of your stomach that doesn't allow you to just be a quitter? How did that get put into people? And then I think about, right, the fear-based denial of the problem. Man, at least I know I'm here admitting to some of the shortcomings. You know what I'm saying? I know what I'm saying. At least to myself. And acknowledging it is important. But at least the fear isn't there anymore.
Have to recognize that the problem exists. Recognize that there is a problem to begin with. And I think by asking the question, is everybody content with the way things are, and nobody raised their hand, I think that's great because it at least acknowledges to me that people here today recognize we have a problem. And that's healthy, that's good, okay? Many people out there don't believe we have a problem. You know, they like this place. They like the world the way that it is, you know, which is unfathomable to me, because to me it's a living hell. And that's not because of how my own personal life is going. I'm very content with my own personal life. I have no self-inflicted suffering in my personal life. I don't create problems for myself. My life goes on very well according to how I live it without hurting anybody else. The problem is other people. And that's another thing the New Agers won't acknowledge, and they'll flip out if you say that there's a problem with someone else. There are problems with other people, okay? And people will say people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. My glass house has been taken down long since, long time ago, because I went through all that personal introspective work, and I dug deep into my subconscious and faced those problems and confronted them head on and healed them and came out of the mindset that I was once in. Okay? So, you know, people will say, if there's something you don't like, you're seeing in other people, that's something in yourself that you're seeing in them. This is New Age mumbo-jumbo nonsense.
Yeah, and I will use my example. I use work ethic. Pretending that their lack of work ethic and inability to rise to the occasion is somehow appropriate, and then mine is overboard, is ridiculous. Honest to God, whoever that might be for you, as long as it's moral and good, to create the ideas, then apply action to a situation, force, effort, get stuff done. If you're not paying attention, it's not going to magically appear. You have to, there is action that has to be applied. And this, how dare I go above and beyond for anyone else but myself mentality is the Luciferian ideas that I believe have indoctrinated the world. Self-service creates nothing good. And the fact that they defend self so much means that I think they've been convinced to buy into the control system.
Okay? If you're not part of the problem, I'm not part of this problem. I can say that honestly. I'm not part of this problem. I can look at every single person, anybody who's watching this, and say, I'm not part of the problem that's happening on the earth. With all honesty and knowing that I am telling the truth with that. Okay? But see, at one point, I was part of the problem. And a big part of the problem. Okay? What I had to do at some point is stop doing this and pointing out and saying the problem lies elsewhere while I was still part of it. And then I had to do this and point squarely at myself and say, what do I need to change here, here, and finally here in the guts? In the courage. You know, people will say, yeah, change happens in the mind, it happens in the heart. But lastly, it happens in the guts. We need to
And then to be fair, The gut biome is now, we know how important it is for the intangible or chemical important location. I don't know much about the chakras. I should look into that one. I wonder what that one is, what it stands for. Interesting. Oh, would that coincide with the solar plexus, the willpower here, you think? Because I'm thinking above the joy, sensuality, and emotion. But and I know nothing about that. I just figure we will expand a little bit along the path.
Generate what I call the heart, mind, in the courage. You know, people will say, yeah, change happens in the mind, it happens in the heart. But lastly, it happens in the guts. We need to generate what I call the heart, mind, guts. Okay? You got to care enough to know and then put it into action. The heart, mind, guts. Okay? That taking action is the most important step when it comes to creating change. And we're going to get to that in a moment. But the whole point here is I had to look at what I needed to change about myself in my thoughts, my emotions, and my actions, and then change those things in myself. This is what most people want to run away from. They want to say, yeah, I want those things that I say I want to magically to be present in my life, but I don't want to do those things that require self-change in how I think, in how I feel, and in how I act. I want it magically to happen without changing those things in me. So I can honestly look at the rest of the world and say, the problem does not lie within me. I am not seeing a manifestation of myself in other people. Other people have not done the same process that I have, the introspective work that I have, and gone through that painful, painstaking work that involves effort, hard effort. I'm not up here telling people, I'm offering you the tonic. You're going to take a sip and magically you will be enlightened. Okay? Knowing what's going on in the world is hard work. It involves destruction. It's a destructive process. It involves destruction of belief systems. It involves completely breaking down barriers.
Now, as we rail away against that, I talk about this on the channel a lot, that you can't create. It's hard to create through destruction, but here is one of those examples where I am 100% wrong. Having to destroy the cages in place is essential to being free from them, because most of them we bring along ourselves, right? We just lock ourselves up. I got the key. I'm going to lock myself in because it's safer. Well, no, I hated myself. I'm probably not as good at saying it stuff as Mark, but I hated myself. And when I looked in the mirror, I saw an enemy. And there is hundreds of examples of this rant on the channel. That in the end, it was making peace with myself that allowed me to put all the negative energy into that token and never return. Use it as a symbol of something I can't ever be enslaved by again. And then openly share it with y'all. Because that was the system. It had to cure a few of my own shortcomings before I could ever figure out that, the 6,000-year-old human sacrificial cult is a big problem.
They're in your head. Okay? Hardly anybody wants to do that work. People want to run 1,000,000 miles an hour in the opposite direction from that work. Anything but that. I'll take the grave instead of that. Okay? That's where most people's heads are at. All right? So let's get back to the steps here for problem solving. The first is you got to recognize that there's a problem. If you are in denial, good luck. Let me know how that works out for you. Because you're not solving any problem in a state of denial at all. Fear-based denial of the problem must first be dealt with and conquered and stamped out. And you have to acknowledge how bad it is. You know? People feel symptoms coming on of a disease or something, and they want to ignore it because they don't want to believe I'm sick. I don't want to believe I'm sick. I don't want to believe I have a problem. Then you're waiting. You don't get it diagnosed, and then it turns into a much bigger problem, which is where we're at as a society for ignoring this information. This is what denial looks like, symbolically.
That symbolically and actually a really good place to wrap up part 5. I'm pretty sure we're still in the intro. The intro is as valuable as the rest, though. So, Mark Passio, Natural Law Seminar, part 1 of 3. Part 5 for this channel, because I don't think we're going to go 6 hours straight. But we'll see you back in the morning if you're interested. Later.